emails on anyone. I'm like driving, so I can't really look.
Oh, Gustavo asked about the conversation after the meeting.
It's the fact that.
What's that? Gustavo asked if the one.
Oh, yeah, I'm down, yeah.
Yeah, so he's basically said.
He's online.
He's not. He
I
emailed us.
ran into him at the Snowflake Fest, and I think he's gonna try to come in person.
Great. So we'll see.
There you go.
There he is. All right,
Yay.
come on in. Okay, so I believe that we are live streaming. Let me just confirm that. Great, okay, we're live streaming, so we can officially start the meeting. We have new people, maybe around introductions?
Sure. I'll start. My name is Paul Stankus. I'm the chair of Complete Streets. I think I may be in my second term now, since you're speaking about terms. I think I was probably guessed maybe about 3 years already.
Yeah, I have.
But
this
only-
is your third year.
Only been chair for maybe 6 months most. So I live downtown Kingston, and I'm just interested in all these things. I'm not here in a professional capacity at all. Just interested in citizens. Just go around the room.
Okay, hi, I'm Alejandra, and I'm officially the vice chair. That's a really long time, but anyway. And yeah, so I guess I'm coming to the end of my first term.
I'm Ryan Jennings. I'm the guest today. I've been in the area for 10 years. I bought my house in Kingston around about 3 years ago. And I've seen the changes in Kingston over the last decade to the streets. I think the city has made some really good choices. So I would like to be a part of what happens in the future.
I'm Claudia Ford, and I've been on Complete Streets now, I guess, for 4 years. I am legally blind, so I have a definite interest in safe sidewalks and complete streets. My background is in public works, and I was in public works for, I don't know, about 25 years as an active person. So that's one of the reasons why I'm interested, just to make sure that they're following best practices, but also to put some input into what we can do and what we can't do. That's
Many of you know me, I'm Emily Flynn, I'm the Director of Health and Wellness for the City of Kingston, I'm the staff liaison for Complete Streets. I also am liaison for the Road Walking State Commission, which is most of my work, which I'm happy to talk about at any time. You see her pronouns. That's it.
Hi, my name is Gustavo Salve. Lived in Kingston for 4 years. And everybody care about the community in Kingston. I lived here for 2 years. And it's my
I'm Brandon Dennis. He, him. I live in Midtown Kingston for the last couple of years. I am applying to join the council. This was my second meeting as a guest. That's all.
Hi, I'm Ezra. I'm very wet right now. It's raining very hard. He, him, and they, them are fine, and live over by the YMCA, and I live part-free in Kingston, and that's what I'm here to represent.
Hey, everybody, I'm John Schultheis, city engineer.
Ryan Coon, Deputy Superintendent of Public Works.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Great.
Jump into administrative stuff or?
Sure.
Move the agenda around.
Oh, yeah, well, maybe we talked about possibly doing the DPW segment first, just so you don't stick around. You don't want to?
No, I'm happy to start.
All right. Well, in that case, then let's just maybe quickly through the administrative
Yeah,
stuff.
my stuff's pretty fast. So I think voting members, if you guys don't mind staying after at the end, I recommend you guys go into like an executive session. You can make a vote on the application from Brandon. When we get to it, Brian, if you want to introduce yourself, that's usually what happens. So that can, of course, that part of the agenda back on there. I wanted to bring up following members' terms are ending, which I just mentioned, say it all again. So Gustavo, Brian, Claudette, and Ella, are all due to reapply, who'd like to serve again. Thank you, Ella, I've already received your application. Claudette, I'll work with you. I believe we've heard from Brian that he's not going to reapply. So Gustavo, then that's up to you to reapply. That covers that. I think we have in our, procedures that in the first meeting of the year to set the meetings dates and times. Can I suggest we set that tonight? Then I can put on the calendar so that we all are still settled for January. If we wait till January, it's sort of, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to set it and get those calendar invites out. So then that's my next point of business here is, do you want to keep the same meeting times? What would you like for next year?
I know there's been some discussion about possibly having meetings later in the day, just because it's a challenge for a lot of people to get here during 9 to 5 hours. But then we would, you would be possibly not being able to join us. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'll make it work. To me, it's actually more about the availability of this room. So
Okay.
that's another factor is, there's other meetings at different, usually many city events happen like the second Tuesday, the third Wednesday, so they're usually pretty routine on it. So we would just want to look at the calendar to see if
Okay.
it's available.
I'm not sure how this would be handled as a vote or what the sort of, but I just know, for instance, EJ, I've never even met her. And because this, she can't get here during business hours, so, not sure if other people have thoughts they want to express on it, but I know that it would also be easier for me if this was after 5 o'clock.
I mean, I think it makes sense that at least check the availability if there's a good like 5 to 6:30. We can consider.
Great, that's a good place to start at least.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So, on a typical day, it looks like the next meeting in this room is at 6:30, so you could move it up a little bit. I wouldn't go too close to 6:30 because that's the finance committee. I would leave like a half an hour maybe in between. So you could move this a half an hour and go from 4:30 to 6. That's an option. Or you could look at other days.
I mean,
We could do 5 o'clock. Like if we switch to a different day of the week.
Sure. So right now, I'm just looking at what is on the calendar right now for December. I can look on the city's website also as another option. So I know, for example, the third Wednesday is not available. That's the police commission and Livewell's on the other side. If you wanted to look at the second, it looks like so the second Thursday, so right now we're on the second Wednesday, is the zoning board of appeals. Basically, it starts at 6. So I don't know, if you guys want to throw out a time and I can tell you if it's available, that's probably a better way to do it.
well, I wonder if doing it immediately at 5, it might be a little better, but it would be a little better for me, but it wouldn't be, the ideal sort of thing. You maybe would have a little buffer after 5, but then it starts getting pretty late, and I don't know if that's ideal either. Yeah. It's just kind of tricky. This is sort of an imperfect time that people just gotten used to, so it's like you just keep it because everyone knows it's this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think any time will work out 100% for
Exactly.
everybody. I know I rearrange things around this meeting to accommodate this time. So if we were to change it, I could do the same day in terms of the second Tuesday or second Wednesday or, but I couldn't like change it to the first. The first different Wednesday of the month, that wouldn't work. Or the first Thursday, I'm just saying, so if it was maybe the first Tuesday or the first Wednesday right now, it's okay, but the time it is now, I've kind of already locked myself into my schedule. But, I would accommodate if it changes as best as I could.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean. Maybe the conclusion is just to not move it then. I mean. I feel like it's kind of a similar sort of situation for a lot of us.
Yeah, personally, I have a flexible schedule, so.
Hmm.
Various things.
Well-
The only other person not here is EJ and Brian's stepping up, so EJ
Right.
is the only other.
And we know that she had difficulty with the time as it is. Well, we can maybe take it offline and discuss it by email.
Do you want me to send out a January meeting date for this time? And then you guys
Sure.
can talk about it more? Great.
But we can look, how do we look at what's available? We go on the Kingston website.
So if you go to the city's kingston-ny.gov, the city's calendar's on there. And you can see all of the meeting dates on that calendar or the listing.
The council meetings are set though. Aren't they set by council rules or regulations, or are they just voted? I mean, because they're usually pretty standard as to
Yeah.
they meet at this time, so they won't change.
Probably not. I believe they set them every January.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they're usually pretty
Yeah.
static, so we would have to figure out how to float around there.
Yeah, they're not gonna move for you.
Yeah, no, they're not.
So, you know, like, let's say you want to, you're like, oh, what about Monday? So unfortunately, the calendar's imperfect. You'd have to click in on the event and see what time. So this is Board of Ethics is on the Mondays at 4 p.m. So that's how you can see what's on the calendar.
All right, maybe we can send some emails back and forth about it, and poke around the calendar and see if we can find something that might be a little more ideal, but seems like that's maybe might be unlikely.
But in the meantime, I'll set up January, and then if that changes, we can just,
Yeah.
at least we'll have that on the calendar, so it's reserved.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Oh, then I just want to remind you all, in January, you'll vote for officers again. So, it's also nice to break that up to 2 different meetings, so you have dates on officers.
What are the officers besides chair and vice chair? Is there anything else?
All right, so there's two, the way that the rules of procedure have been written, there's 2 classes of membership, one's voting members and non-voting. So right now, we're just talking about the voting members. And let's see, the officers are chair, vice chair, and secretary.
We've never had a secretary.
I think, wasn't EJ?
Yeah, I think EJ was officially the secretary. Yeah.
That was kind of recently.
Yeah, and then we were kind of toying with the idea of taking notes somehow with AI, tried the time, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
all right.
so don't have to vote on it tonight, put it aside, but maybe you should also start thinking about what rules you want to play next year. So that you sort of have an idea of into that conversation. And that's it for administration.
All right. Great then, should we just quickly have our new applicant talk a bit more about himself?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm an immigrant. I'm from Canada originally. I'm applying for my citizenship soon. I came to the area in 2015 and started a bed and breakfast at Sardi's with a friend of mine. Since then, we've purchased other properties. We now have long-term rentals and short-term rental properties in Sardi's. I bought my house in Kingston 3 years ago, over here at the top of the Roman area. My background, so most recently, I guess I'm a property manager, landlord. I was a journalist in a previous life. Lived in several different countries. Originally from outside of Toronto, grew up in a small town.
I guess one question I had looking at your application was if you're interested in a number of different sort of councils, right?
Yes.
Is this one of the area you're most interested in, or how would you sort of
Emily
rank
was the
us?
first person to reach out to.
There you go.
So this is my first
Okay.
council meeting ever. But I'm very invested in this city and I want to be a part of it in some way. Whether it's this committee or this committee and some other committee or other things, but I read the mandate of the Complete Streets agenda, and I think it's important to make this city walkable, bikeable, drivable, better sidewalks where we can.
Can people serve on more than one?
Yeah. I can't tell you what the availability is of the other boards though.
Right.
Yeah.
They list them, I know in the mayor's weekly email, they always list at the bottom,
And he's
which
always.
ones have openings.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where I applied. And I think I put, sort of in my categories like historic preservation.
Right.
Stuff like that. Stuff that I'm most interested in. The look of this city, and the livability for everyone.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions? I think we all have access to the application too, so. Any plan to vote at the next meeting?
But yeah, I guess just kind of echoing off what Paul said, what do you, like, what kind of interest do you have in Complete Streets? Like, have you read things or have you?
I've read what was available, through the city's, website.
Or like outside of, do you
Outside of
read
that, I haven't.
articles about complete, or like anything related to urbanism or that kind of thing?
I haven't,
Okay.
but, it is interesting.
The Complete Streets site on the city site also has some links to some articles and some information that's worth taking a look at.
Okay.
All right. Great. Unless anyone else has anything, thanks. We appreciate your applications.
Yeah, I just wanted to come and see what this is all about and see if it's a right fit for you and if it's a right fit for me.
Great.
too. First date.
All right, then I guess we'll move on to old business. Just quickly, the last thing I had heard about the sidewalk financing was that it was an item in the budget. And the budget's now been approved.
Yeah.
So-
It's in the budget.
Yeah, so that's terrific news. I guess now we wait to hear about funding for our sidewalk consultant.
Yeah, so it's probably, unless there's details that I'm not aware of, my understanding is that I'll be the project manager for that project, so that's good for you, because I can give you a text when you want. The bad news is I haven't started it yet.
Okay.
So my understanding is, my next steps would be to sort of, create some documents for myself so that I understand what the project is. And then I'll start to draft up a request for proposals. What I would love is to possibly consider this group to be the project advisory committee, so I might like to send that to you, get your feedback on it. I'll have to confirm that with the administration, of course, if that's the right process, but many more details to come. That said, the project I think is going forward, and right now, it's just my capacity that's limiting it going forward faster.
That reminds me actually, to sort of make a little segue. I
Yeah.
wanted to apologize because I did not send the letter about Bluestone Court. I forgot, and then Thanksgiving came along and then the deadline came.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate, and I apologize for that. Kind of got lost in the holiday.
You want to explain? So the planning board asked different interested parties to express their feelings on this, who was the designated, oh my God, I can't believe, I can't get this
Lead
right.
agency?
Thank you, lead agency on the seeker, which is the environmental review.
SEQR, yeah.
So basically, this committee was just asked to approve the planning board to lead that process. So it wasn't
It wasn't.
a huge ask of you,
Right.
yeah,
It
it was
was-
kind of a formality.
Yeah, it was a formality. We were gonna thank them for asking us. And then tell them to kind of keep us in the loop, I believe. I had some notes on it, but then,
I mean, you could still ask them to keep you in the loop.
yeah, all right, I might then.
You can still, you
Yeah.
can still say thanks for thinking of us.
Yeah, I know. I just missed the deadline that they were looking for feedback anyway, so. My bad.
Can I ask, so can I get a quick rundown of what the financing means for the sidewalks? Is it, you know, all sidewalks are gonna get repaired?
Well, yes, theoretically,
In 7
over,
decades.
in the course of 30 years, yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so basically, we came up with a white paper that, with a lot of input from Brian Slack, who's stepping down. He works for the county, in the Department of Transportation.
These are transportation.
Plan.
Yeah. And so we looked at a couple of ways to sort of fund these projects to improve the city's state of the sidewalks. And our conclusion, our sort of recommendation was to do basically to raise money through a fee on property owners that would then do a sort of 30-year cycle of going mile by mile and doing all the sidewalks until they're all done and then sort of starting again. And so over the course of 30 years, this is sort of the number we put out there. Every sidewalk would be either built if it wasn't there, if it was deemed necessary, or repaired if it needed to be repaired.
The concrete or bluestone?
Let's hope. but we don't-
Concrete as per the zoning, and then bluestone theoretically in the historic districts where bluestone is better approved.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the white paper's available.
Is this it?
You can keep
Can I
that if you
keep this
want.
copy?
Yeah, because I can print out another one. We have it in our
But that
files.
sounds like pretty good.
Yeah, so this first step was to, for the city to get a consultant to sort of come up with this sort of a formalized plan. And then there are many steps after that, including like a referendum, let's see, we need to vote on amongst other things, but this was sort of the first step. Getting it into the budget, and getting money for it, so.
I'm actually gonna send another one to the printer because I was to come back here. Welcome. Hey, Karen.
Okay, should we just move on to,
Jump to Ryan since,
Sure, yeah, well, yeah, I initially asked him about it, he said he didn't mind, but
oh, you did,
Yeah.
okay, good, all right, I just was aware of that.
there's a couple more. All right, so the grant application? Any
Well,
updates?
my apologies, everyone. I do not have an update for you this month.
Okay.
So I will go back for you and send it out by email.
School zone program.
I dropped all the stuff this month, I'm sorry. So we didn't vote.
Letter, no. We can send her an email about that.
Yeah, I mean,
You can vote over email.
can we? Can we go over email? Yeah. Oh, okay.
As long as it's been discussed, I believe, in a meeting.
This has been discussed.
No, I think she was just asking, can we go
General.
over email, and if it's been discussed, and I believe you have to have a unanimous vote.
I would say it this way, so technically you're not a public meeting, this doesn't have to be a public meeting because you don't decide on the budget and you're not elected leaders. So you're an advisory council to the common council that does do that. So it doesn't meet the requirements of being a public meeting. That said, we run it as if it's a public meeting and we live stream it, we do all the other things. So there's less restrictions on how you vote. I don't know that you've ever voted via email, but I believe that you can. And I believe that we started to have a process for it. I think we've said that if you did a vote over email, we would just attach all of the emails to the meeting notes. Even though we don't really, basically to me, what that means is I would paste it into the agenda notes document so that it's sort of public.
All right, so
You could do,
That's fine.
tactical urbanism. I know there was a document going around, that sort of booklet.
Okay, so wasn't that gonna be in the budget?
I believe it is in the
Do
budget.
we know, how do we find out about that? 'Cause
You can, the budget is available on the city's website.
But would it, is there a line item just for that?
Did you get funds for, they're talking about like low cost, quick implement things like marking, signage, possibly speed tables?
Did I get additional
Is it
funding?
a special line item or is it just?
No, they cut the funding.
Oh.
So I have no additional funding from what our normal budget line items are.
I don't think we know where it is in the budget, so I think we'll have
Okay.
to ask for that.
So who do we ask for
I can ask the mayor.
that? Okay, you're gonna ask, okay, great.
Awesome.
All right.
And I guess, is that also appropriate to ask for any sort of? I guess not, never mind, I was gonna say anything else about the sort of funding for the sidewalk, but you'll know everything about that, there's nothing to sort of follow up with, that's gonna be outside of your.
Yeah, I think I'll be your point of contact for that. Yeah, go on.
Is it possible that the tactical urbanism is a concept that is considered to be addressed, but is not specifically funded? If you're saying you did not get additional funds, so my understanding is that there's no line item that says this is for tactical urbanism, but the general understanding was that you would adopt those principles where they fit in your existing budget structure.
Well, in the legislation, though, there was a law passed where they said they would have funding for it.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I'm sorry, the Public Works superintendent, you said you didn't get additional funding. They cut, I'm just trying to understand.
My budget for signage and pavement markings is through my operating budget.
Right.
My operating budget is what we use to refresh and or renew when we pave a street if there's something new that we want to do. That's where that money comes from. It comes directly from my operating budget.
Okay, so when you do that in your operating budget, when you decide, okay, this needs to be refreshed or renewed, do you look at the philosophies or the concepts of tactical urbanism or other things when you make the decision as to what kind of signage you're gonna replace or renew with?
I mean, we collectively with engineering try to,
Yeah.
anytime that we're gonna do something, try to come up with,
Okay,
if something needs to be corrected or changed,
Right.
change it at that
all
time.
right. So my understanding, if it was me doing the budget, they would say, yes, it's in there, but it's not a specific line item.
You won't see a line item that says this is tactical
Exactly.
urbanism, like it's paint or it's signs or it's blacktop
Right.
or
But
it's a
did
curb.
sorry.
Yeah.
But did the budget increase, like did the amount of
No.
money? increase?
No, that's-
So how,
Yeah.
yeah, so then it doesn't seem like there's money in there, so that I think they're not putting more money in.
Well, in, as an old public works director with budget speak, it's there, but it's not. No, I'm really trying to be understanding and sympathetic to what his problem is.
Yeah.
It's there, and you can use those as guidelines and philosophies, but there's no specific line item, and probably won't be, that says this is for tactical urbanism. That.
No, it's not how our budget is lined. It's.
Yeah,
it's
that would be the
specifically-
way I would understand it.
It's under traffic control.
Yeah.
That's what it's under. That's what my sign shop and my paint crew works out of.
And your overall operating budget did not increase.
A decrease.
There you go.
Oh, it just.
It did increase, that's what I was trying, I thought I said that. That's
Oh,
what I
I'm
said.
sorry. I actually misspeak saying that.
Yeah,
Our budget did increase, but our line items specific to the paint shop and other areas of the budget were decreased. My operating budget decreased, the overall budget increased.
okay, all right.
Okay, I'm ready.
There is still other things that could be done for practical urbanism that doesn't require any of those things, right? With cones in a shape, you know, that we monitored that for a while and, you know, maybe like a cheaper version. I've seen a lot of cities doing that, so.
Also, if you guys can tell me what it is that you're envisioning, there may be creating healthy schools and community funds that can buy some materials. But we sort of need to know what it is that you're thinking,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
Right, DPW doesn't care whether we paint one line or 6 lines on the road. We just need to know which lines to paint. Are we gonna put it back the way it was, or are we gonna change something?
So Emily, what, the grant you just mentioned, what can it pay for?
I can buy street paint. I can buy those pedestrian crossing signs. I cannot buy concrete and I cannot pay for staff time. But I can buy sort of
Right.
I could buy
I think-
pedestrian counters, I could,
Okay.
things like that.
But looping back to, I think, Ella's question or about the school zones, right? So one of the things we have identified, there's inconsistent signing in school zones.
Yeah.
So if your grant can pay for some of those standard signs.
It's a big fat maybe. I would have to go back and look at the documentation to see.
What it's called, sorry, Safe and Healthy School.
Creating healthy schools and communities.
Oh, okay.
We refer to it often as CHISC, so my apologies if you ever hear me say the word CHISC. There's a page on the Health and Wellness Department's website, it's all about CHISC. We're in the third year of a 5-year, $3.1 million grant from the state's Department of Health. And it's about physical activity, encouragement, and nutrition. So we have different subcontractors, but the work that's here at the city is some nutritional policy. And we see a new vending machine, that's part of that. And then my work, which is some physical activity encouragement, which is the building of post office park, it's purchasing of bike racks that are being installed around town, and some other projects like that. That's how I hit sometimes in my work.
That's great.
Yeah. But the clock is ticking on that grant. So like we have about a year to do a project.
A year to, and you
Yeah.
already have the funds or you have to apply?
It's a reimbursable grant. So
Okay,
basically, you would have to envision a project. What I
okay.
Here's a potential project. Every September is parking day, and you could take over a parking space and use that, sort of outfit it to be like a temporary park. I could buy hay bales, I could buy fake plastic grass, I could buy a temporary bench or something. And that sort of shows the value of the public space that is a parking spot. That's the kind of project that my grant could do. So, think about that.
Yeah, I love the council. And also I was thinking,
But also to be clear, I don't have the capacity to run that by myself. So
Right,
you all would
yeah.
need to envision it, run it, but I can help coordinate it.
yeah, I definitely have ideas. It's also one of those things where it's, yeah, it would be a lot to do, but yeah, I thought about different things like getting a positive involved with their murals.
Do you have to reimburse the city for lack of parking funds?
The nice thing about my work is actually I have a second grant funded source. And so it's possible if we can't pay for that with CHISC, we might be able to, I don't know.
I'm just
We have
curious,
another
because if you take it out of service, then
Yeah.
there is a cost associated to it, and if your grant will do that, and everybody says, great. If they say no, then they go, well, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
guess sorry, are you done? My question is, we can't really design the thing ourselves, so, right, I mean, if it's something where we're changing some kind of traffic pattern, we would suggest it, but then we're not gonna be actually implementing it, right? Or,
Well,
like, I don't know
If you have general ideas, like, are we talking school zones or more broadly? Can you give me an example? Because I'll give you an example of some things we did
Yeah, yeah.
implement in the past year, like what we did on Jansen Avenue.
Yeah.
the Striping on Broadway, which is a change. We just recently added a stop sign, magnet wall,
Yeah,
those sorts of things. If
and,
that's along the lines, we probably have one or, a couple other projects of that type in mind. I think that's the idea behind the tactical urbanism mantra, was quick to implement and relatively low cost.
yeah, so,
But some of those do require action by the common council as well to legislate. But in general, those either get originated by an alderman, or sometimes between myself and DPW will originate those. But, we're open to suggestions relative to that from this body.
yeah. Well, I think, I think paint, my ideal thing would be to have something that's actually hard, like concrete or rocks, which is part of why I wanted to have you, Brian, come in. In New York City, they'll just put a big boulder or a big concrete planter in a daylight zone. But there's also, there's paint, there's kind of the vertical paint, where it's like the pylons or whatever those are. And, like making bump outs with that, like, maybe at the YMCA, making, bump out so that it kind of narrows the street and helps with prevent people from like parking right there and blocking the vision coming out of the parking lot. Yeah, there's a lot of things, and there's, painting, like George Washington, we've kind of discussed like the fact that, well, actually now there's a new speed limit sign at the end of that, you put that sign in, right? By George Washington on Washington Avenue.
Yeah.
There's a new
And school
25
zone.
miles where it
Yeah.
ends the school zone, so that's good, but we were talking at one point about maybe like painting the, something on the ground, something on the street, so it kind of shows where the school stops and ends. And it could be something artistic,
Wasn't there something weird about how, isn't that like a state route or something, and how you can't, there's certain things you can.
Washington Avenue is ours.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
I thought there was some
We
limitation.
still have some constraints.
Right.
Street art is
Yeah.
generally not allowed. I guess there's been some changes recently on like by the LGBTQ center with the multicolored crosswalk where, okay, that's maybe more allowed than it has been in the past, but generally painting, each color has a purpose on street parking, so
yeah,
simply putting art on streets is not supported.
There's also, different things like zigzags, things that can kind of visually signal that there's something more complex.
I'll give, like, here's an example, Washington Avenue specifically, I mean, I think one of the things that probably needs to happen is a double yellow line on that street, based on, and that comes from the MUTCD, based on volume. It's increased in the last 5 years, but it's now at like 7,000 vehicles per day on sections of Washington Avenue. And then where that, double yellow is, because you have parking on one side. But
Right, yeah.
that's an example, I think, of the quick implement type projects. It's not a full streetscape project.
So we had talked about getting the subcommittee back together and then coming up with a list of suggestions, basically.
2025.
Yeah.
The daylighting is a really good idea. There's definitely locations around the city
Yeah.
where, you have a state law that it can be overridden by a sign.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Oh,
So-
day.
so-
No,
Day-
I know daylight.
With daylight, well,
Does everyone?
daylighting is not allowing parking too close to an intersection or a crosswalk.
Which is standard at, right, John? 19 feet by
I think from a crosswalk,
crosswalk is,
one's 20 and one's 30, is the stop sign versus crosswalk, I always get them mixed up in my head, but that those state minimums can be overridden by signs or markings. So there are locations in the city, like right down here by the Top Taste Restaurant, there's parking allowed to within, I think, about 4 or 5 feet of the stop sign.
There's a sign that says you can park.
And it's because there's a sign, no parking here to corner is usually what it says, so.
Oh, I see.
So there's it would be helpful to me if this group wanted to form a list of daylighting locations, priorities like that, where the sign is, and I can respond with whether it's 20 or 30, but I don't have any inventory of that.
Yeah.
Those do typically have to go to the common council because each of those is legislated, each of those locations individually. So if, for example, let's take the Hasbrook example, if you saw that and said, well, we want, 20, we want our proper 20 feet from the stop sign. Just, if I had a list of those, that's something that could be implemented,
Yeah.
relatively low cost.
Cause that could be something where, I mean, I would love to see something like the pylons that, they're not actually gonna
Yeah.
stop anyone from going over it, but it just kind of, sends more of a signal.
Yeah, I mean, that might be an opportunity for Ryan to weigh in on his experience, because we did have those for some time on Greenkill.
Short,
Yeah, they didn't last.
very short.
Yeah.
They're hit by cars or
Yeah.
what?
Do you mean bollards?
Where were those?
Those sort of flexible. Yeah.
Flexible kind of,
Yeah,
they don't
They're just
damage,
destroyed.
it's not like, but they don't stay up very long.
No, they don't last.
Where were they?
At the end of Greenkill at the five-way intersection,
Oh,
right there, it used to be a liquor store, I'm not sure what it is now, right on the
yeah.
corner. There were 4 or 5 to indicate that the bike lane was not an actual driving lane. And
Oh, yeah.
in the first couple of months, most of them have been knocked down and reinstalled to the
Yeah.
point of, after a year's time, they were all destroyed to the point of not being able to reinstall them. Both the cups in the ground and the delineators themselves.
Yeah.
it's just kind of frustrating. The manufacturer says, oh, this thing can be hit 25 times. It really can't.
Or maybe it's just.
Yeah.
Right,
So-
and what's complicated about things like that, specifically to that location, is anything in the roadway really has to be seasonal. So what makes it, I mean, it's December right now, and we've already pulled the flat Stanleys in once already and put them back out because we hadn't had snow. But they hadn't gotten pulled in when we had the snow the other day because we weren't expecting to have 4 inches of snow. And they became a problem for the plow trucks. I mean, you can plow around them for only so long, and then you have to.
Wait, sorry, what were they?
Flat Stanley, you know what flat Stanley is?
Pedestrian crossing signs.
Yeah, in-road sign.
Yeah.
Oh,
On a weighted base.
Oh, but the ones that like have a picture of.
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Can you call them flat Stanley?
Yeah, that's because they get run over and they lay flat in the road.
I
Flat Stanley.
thought it was a reference, isn't there children's book, the flat?
There is.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that kind of dovetails right into our discussion. So I'm not sure what else you wanted to discuss, but I know that I had just questions about the new speed tables and like there's the one on Chester, right? I guess, initially there seemed to be so much, discomfort just sort of around this, the ability to plow, but it's okay to plow on the speed tables? Like, is that?
If they're built properly, they can be plowed over.
Okay.
My concern is less with the plows and more with the traffic itself. So in that location, John and I had discussed it to nauseam on the actual location of that to be effective on Westchester Street. And my concern with traffic is trying to go up the hill. So in inclement weather, you have to slow down to traverse this to then regain enough momentum to get up the hill. To be seen. The other morning, we didn't really have a whole lot of experience with that because the road was cleared pretty quick when traffic was coming into the hospital for the shift change. If properly placed and properly built, they're not a problem for my equipment. If they're improperly placed or improperly built, they can become a major problem because it's an area that makes it a little more difficult to remove snow and ice from because it's raised. And it can also significantly affect drainage. So one of the compromises we made with the one on Westchester Street was to tail the edge because we have parking on one side. So to reduce the height of that in the parking area was not a significant effect on traffic. The opposite side, people can't travel close enough to the curb line because the telephone poles are right at the back of the curb. So they typically stay out and aren't going to try and avoid it. If anybody's gone behind ShopRite in Kingston to go the back way, behind ShopRite into Home Depot, if you drive a small car and try and go over those, it will destroy the bottom of your car if you hit them enough times, or you hit them even at 10 miles an hour. So the way they built theirs to not affect the drainage is they tailed it off in the middle. So every car that you watch go through there, they go right to the middle and try and miss as much of the speed bump as they can. And they're paying attention to that on the road and not paying attention to other traffic or pedestrians in the area. So it's a distraction at the same time. And they're too tall. They're too tall for the length that they.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're describing speed bumps, so one thing, so Ryan's well familiar, we get what's called CHIPS funds from the state, right, to help fund our roads. But if you put a parking lot style speed bump on a road, you will lose that funding.
Joy's Lane, that's a good example.
Yeah, the Joyce Lane ones are an older design. We're not using those anymore.
When you say lose funds, that means chips can't go to maintain that.
Right,
road anymore?
eventually they're gonna say that's not a feature that should be on a public road
Correct.
in the state.
Yeah, gated
So-
streets and non-conforming speed bumps, things like that will nullify your funding.
But speed tables. are
Generally allowed, yeah.
Generally allowed.
Yeah, speed tables, raised crosswalks,
Yeah.
things like that are now being adopted into these programs as well. But they still don't pay for them.
The state doesn't pay for it, it comes out of your funding.
They, and they're costly,
Yeah,
depending on how significant they are, how wide the street is, and what's involved with installing them. They are very costly.
now, do you normally install them, or do you have a contractor install?
We have a contractor as well.
Are there any other spots you guys are thinking for speed tables?
I have one in mind possibly for Washington Avenue. There's a relatively long block between, stop signs there, say between Pearl and Linderman. No, Linderman
Linderman
and
and Greenfield.
Greenfield, yeah.
By GW.
Yeah, and yes, and then when we do our larger Flatbush Foxhall project, I want to say there's roughly 4, going from memory, speed tables planned for Foxhall, correct?
And also being mindful of everything that goes into these projects. One of the main sources of contention on Westchester Street is the noise that it creates. Every time a car hits that, like, you hear the noise.
The landscape trailer.
The landscape trailers, the trucks with the roll-up doors, and even the car. I mean, if you're sitting in your living room and your house is only 25 feet from the curb, every car that goes by, boom, 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 all day long. And we get these complaints about manholes. Washington Avenue is a good example of that. Some manholes are better than others. Some of them don't belong to DPW, they belong to other utilities. We adjust them as close as we can get them. But people complain about, every time a car goes by, it hits the water valve, and you hear the clink, 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 clink. The gas valves, same thing. Potholes, every time a car hits a pothole in front of my house, the whole house shakes. And then we go and install, a speed table or something in front of their house.
Oh, now we did.
And now we create that noise for every single vehicle that goes by because it crosses the entire lane. So every vehicle in both directions hits this and they listen to it all day long and they feel it in the house all day long, all night long. So you have to be mindful of that as well. Plus, placement is not as easy as you would think. The stretch between Bond Street and say Midway on the hill on Westchester Street seems like it'd be pretty easy to find a spot. But you have to align it properly so that it doesn't match up with the driveway. You need people to be able to turn in and out of their driveways without having to traverse one of these speed humps sideways. That's not safe either. So we found a decent location and compromise. And I'm not sure how effective it's been. I know the complaints have slowed down a little bit about speeding, but I'm not sure that the traffic has.
I drive that street every day, because I live on Augusta Street up there, and it certainly slowed me down.
Right, and it's, at the average driver, it will slow down.
Yeah.
But I have plenty of times that I've spent on Hasbrook Avenue for hours at times, and 50% of the traffic slows down for the one on Hasbrook.
I used to live like about half a block up from the speed table. And it seemed like people would like probably slow down from the speed table and then gun it to get them down right after they're over it. Yeah. like the traffic noise from motor noise in front of my house was incredible.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's one reason why I think that I'm interested in the horizontal deflection rather than the vertical reflection. So vertical would be like a speed bump, something that changes, you know, the level. And then horizontal would be something that kind of narrows the street in. And I think that people drive more slowly and more cautiously when they feel like things are narrower and they might bump into something. Obviously not every single car is going to do that. So that's an interest of mine, and I think that's why I'm interested in doing things like bump outs, because I think it can help slow things down. It can also, you know, create a shorter crossing distance for people. So I was just kind of wanted to, just in a very hypothetical kind of a way. This is not like, I'm not proposing anything right now, but we've talked before about bump outs and potentially trying to do more with concrete, or, you know, like I mentioned before, there's different ways to do this tactically, where you just put a planter down or you put different things down. But we know that, you know, I know that you've got a lot of flack, or, you know, people got really upset that you didn't clear things right away, snowstorm, and I totally empathize with that. So I realize it's very demanding to try to clear all the snow, and that bump outs would potentially create more work for you to do, right? During a snowstorm.
Very much.
So, so I just would like to think about that, and like, if there's some way that we could help create that and not be so much a problem, or what, maybe you could talk more about what that problem is.
The compromise we did is what you see on Henry Street and
Yeah.
Franklin Street.
Yeah.
The red painted bump outs.
Yeah.
Which it's paint.
It's perception.
Yeah.
So,
that's exactly what I-
It's, the road isn't any narrower than it was, but it gives you the perception that it is. It's the same argument that the tree commission makes about street tree plantings. Naturally, it creates traffic calming because it kind of closes the street in, and some claim that people will drive slower because of that perception. When you put a physical barrier between what someone is going to do naturally versus what they're going to do regardless of what you put there, is where DPW kind of gets that head against the wall all the time. Because in the end, we're the ones that have to fix it. For example, the end of Broadway, both sides, if you come off the interchange and as you come around onto Broadway where St. James comes out, that rapid flashing beacon island that comes out there, 3 months into the install of that, it was hit and taken down by a vehicle. It's unexpected. You say, well, how can it be unexpected? It's a 14-foot pole with signs and lights, and how could someone not expect that?
You have to jump the curb and hit it.
They jumped the curb and they hit it and drove away.
Yeah.
It's unexpected for someone who's not familiar with the area. But if you drive that road 10 times a day, of course, you're gonna slow down coming out of the circle and move
Yeah.
over if you have to. On the opposite side of the street, we have an ADA ramp in front of the old Anchor that turns 90 degrees and then turns again 90 degrees and drops into the lane. And there's a deadhead on the end of that. Curb comes out and loops back around. That has been hit and destroyed 3 cars to date. We've repaired it 2 of the 3 times. It's unexpected. It's not unexpected to me, but it's unexpected to the driver that wants to avoid the circle, is traveling at 35 or 40 miles an hour and wants to quick jump onto East St. James Street.
Mhm.
And they're not expecting a curb to be 8 feet out from the curb on the opposite side. So we're dealing with two things. We're trying to change culture of people who have spent their entire lives driving. And we're trying to make our roads as safe as possible for all modes of transportation. We can't go to either extreme. We have to meet in the middle. Because any physical barrier is going to cause some kind of damage, whether it's damage to my equipment because it's not seen in a snowstorm, or it's damage to someone's personal property. If it happens on city property, we get sued. So we have to be mindful of that. Another example, the corner of Wall Street and Franklin. Again, another place that I have spent countless hours of taxpayer money videoing what drivers do when they come to that intersection. And we've tried to make improvements to it based on what we think other drivers are thinking. And what it comes down to is people need to slow down and pay attention to what they're doing.
Is that where the stone house is?
Yeah.
Opposite side.
Okay.
That curb is the way the ramp was built. We have a full height curb there. And we have had 26
Flat tires.
flat tires because people cut the curb or cut the turn too tight and they hit the curb. And then they come and they file a claim with the city saying there's something wrong with this. This is brand new. We didn't change the alignment. We didn't change anything other than it's now new and has an acceptable ADA traversable intersection being close to the school and part of our project.
Meaning the curb is in the same place, but it wasn't.
It's in the same
It
location.
wasn't an ADA curb.
It's
It
not-
May not have been full height before.
It wasn't.
It wasn't full height? Oh, so you could hit it and not get a flat tire.
But my argument to this is that we're trying to now incorporate all of this to make it safer for pedestrians.
Yes.
If people are driving over 5 or 6 inch full height curbs because they're not paying attention, what makes you think they're gonna pay attention to the person that's standing on that ramp?
Exactly.
Those curbs are there to keep people in the street, not allow them to drive up on the sidewalk. And there's many, many, many different types of ADA ramps. My favorite are the ones that return up to full height at the crest of the radius, not the ones that are at street level all the way around. Because anyone that cuts that turn is going to be driving on the ramp. We have plenty of them in the city, and you see tire tracks 4 and 5 feet onto that ramp. If someone was standing there, they would be hit by a vehicle. You would think that the driver would see you, but how many times does the same person have to hit the same curb and get a flat tire before they realize that they're too close? Should only happen once. Oop, I made a mistake. We go through with narrowing the entrances in Cornell Street parking lot. The employees that park in that parking lot every day for months were beating on the door because they come zooming into the parking lot and drive over the curb. Not even over just the edge of it, drive over the curb, 3, 4, 5 feet of this curb to get into the parking lot. I drive a full-size quad cab, full-length pickup truck. And I have not once hit a curb in Cornell Street parking lot, not once. But I've also never been in that much of a hurry to get to work.
Well, is this sort of thing for people to learn their lessons? Like, is it
No,
like,
they don't.
they're gonna do it and just be like, oh, hopefully everyone will stop eventually?
There-
Or there's just no hope.
So the reason I tell you
Yeah, the river's on the other side and men's, I think, is on the left. There's a bathroom on every floor also.
The reason I tell you all this is because the first point that you had brought up about snow removal. Uptown, when they had done the redesign of North Front Street and Wall Street, and they had created all those bump outs with the big planters in them. Uptown doesn't have enough parking as it is, but we took up a couple of parking spaces to put these in and make it more visually appealing, functional, and to try and narrow the street up a little bit. Has it been effective? It's been effective in removing parking. We know that. Does it create a traffic issue? Absolutely does. Because if people don't have a place to park, they double park. They park along the island. And then come wintertime, we're not even done plowing yet. And it's DPW, you gotta clear the snow. You gotta clear the snow.
That's snow removal.
And it's entirely snow removal.
There's no snow storage space, so in that part of town.
Right, so,
So you, truck it someplace else?
Correct.
Highway.
yeah, and we're using heavy equipment
Right,
and skid steers
Right.
and dump trucks.
okay.
Typically, immediately following a snowstorm, where these guys have been out anywhere between 6 and 40 hours plowing snow. The last thing we want to do is come to work at 4 o'clock in the morning because we have to remove the snow from uptown before 9 o'clock in the morning.
How long do you guys work a shift when they do snow?
I will more often than not, if I have the resources, will stop them at 16 hours.
Okay.
Is
Is that after they've worked a day, or is that 8 hours plus their 8 hour?
16 consecutive.
16 consecutive, okay.
If I have the resources, I will then dedicate the resources the next day. But we then have to mobilize all of our equipment to uptown. And we'll start at 4 o'clock in the morning and wake everybody up uptown. Half of them love it because there's no snow there. The other half don't like it because I woke you up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I will say it, these are my employees.
Yeah.
Putting this heavy equipment on those sidewalks and curbs is not good for it. It causes damage to these curbs. I mean, it's just the nature of what we do. I don't have enough people with snow shovels to throw all the snow out into the street to effectively clean it up without putting these machines on the sidewalk to push it out. And that's only with a storm that's 6 or 8 inches. Now we get a storm that's 15 inches or 2 feet. I've experienced both here in the city, and it becomes very problematic because it's not just North Front and Wall Street. It's Broadway with the bike lanes. We got 4 inches of snow, the majority of it melted, but the phone still rang the next morning. How come the bike lanes aren't clear on Broadway? So now I've taken these guys away from what they could have been doing that day and put them out there. And we have very limited resources in DPW. We're a large department, but we have a lot of responsibility. And not everybody in DPW drives a plow truck. So what I have to work with that day is what I can allocate to cleaning up. And the more of these places that we build that are going to collect snow are more places that I'm going to have to then send them, not just during the storm, but after the storm as well.
Yeah.
And it's not always about the cost of building it. If we get grants and we build it with the grant, that's great. But I need that money in my operating budget for the equipment to properly maintain it. And then even with street paint, we paint it once, we paint it forever.
Well, yeah, that's, so this is, I don't know, this could be a crazy idea, but we are getting some, I don't know if everyone's heard, we're getting some speed cameras in the coming years. I don't know I don't know if it's gonna be next year or the year after. That's gonna have revenue. And we are a council that can make suggestion or recommendations. So I mean, could that be something that could help you with snow removal if we allocated some of that speed camera money to DPW?
Relative to everything we do, we're talking dollars and cents. It's not, it all depends on the weather and what we have going on. And the revenue that those cameras could potentially generate spread over everyone who's gonna wanna have their hand in that honey pot. It's.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm gonna strongly recommend that and not go into the general budget and that we allocate it for. I mean, I think other places have done that where, you know, you can, I think it's easier to, in a way, sell these speed cameras if you're saying, okay, well, this is specifically what you're gonna get out of, the speed camera. If it just goes in the general budget, people are like, oh, you're being greedy or this or that.
Well, I mean, the first taker will be whoever is putting them up, whatever company. And then it just depends.
Yeah,
on
and
what
then we
you
get
give it
some
back.
The
percentage.
revenue stream, I really is, I don't think it's gonna be that big
Yeah.
to begin with, but I do have a couple of questions. When you have your snow plows out, are you allowed to use other people in the city with CDLs who've been trained on your equipment?
Outside of DPW,
Yes.
that's not. standard practice.
So when I was in New Haven, which was a long time ago, we could pull from the fire department. I was just curious. So that augmented our staff. We also had contractors. Do you have contractors that do snow plowing?
No, we do not have any contractors.
So you do all of your plowing in-house with the staff that you have?
That is correct.
You have a tough job.
If I need additional
You
resources,
have a very tough job.
we will use our shared services agreements. It is atypical during a snowstorm because all the surrounding townships are all out plowing
They're
their
all
own.
out doing the same thing.
When it comes to snow removal after the fact, if we have a large storm, we have utilized the shared service agreements with the state and the county, both.
Okay.
In the event that we are so behind and we have so much snow that needs to be moved, and this was before my time here in the city, they hired private trucking companies to haul the snow, but the actual work.
But you never had anybody that was specifically contracted to a dedicated route so that you could use your forces in other places?
No.
Okay. That makes it, I mean, that makes it easier for me to understand because I come from snow plowing where we did have contractors. And we would, well, DPW, we would also put plows on Packers. And they ran too. In fact, many times we would tell the Packer, don't dump because they needed to wait for the ballast so that they could plow. So I was just thinking of, like, if you're just doing it though, with your available operating licensed staff, you don't have enough staff to do it all the time.
I
So
think the one, yeah, so within DPW, still the, like the wastewater treatment plant staff, a couple of them can plow. They're under DPW, even though they're normally at the wastewater plant.
yeah, but you can pull them, but it's still very difficult if you don't have the dedicated contractors who can do certain things so that you can look at other ways of doing things.
Right, I have 35 CDL drivers, two of which, one is me and the other is the superintendent. So that puts me at 33 staff. Pull out of that, 6 guys in my garage, 1 in the welding shop, a dispatcher, safety coordinator, 1 at the treatment plant, and I'm missing somebody.
And how many lane miles?
86 or 87,
The lane miles is double that, roughly,
double, triple.
160.
Yeah, ish.
80 miles of road, about
Yeah, I think 86 and
6.
86, 8 or something like that.
Yeah. With the heavy snow, I can see how you could be.
Yeah, and there's some places in the city that are not, they're not easy to plow.
No,
Dead end streets, we got dead end streets.
So we have a lot of dead ends. We do have some gnarly hills.
I was gonna say the inclines that you have make it very difficult.
And one of the things that makes our job very difficult is that every snowstorm is a 3-day event. If it snows for 2 hours or it snows for 2 days, it's 3 days worth of plowing regardless of how you do it. There's always a day and a half after the snow ends that we continue to plow.
Because you gotta clean up what you pushed away just to try to get the streets clear.
And we have alternate side parking, which has gotten better. Towards the end of last year, we did okay, even though it was a light winter. But if somebody doesn't move at the right time, we have to go back and clear that when that car is moved.
And we don't-
Everybody moves to the other side. Now we have to
You
move these
can't
repairs.
enact towing.
Ish.
Okay.
We got to a point where it had gotten so frustrating that we towed cars regardless. But it's a lot of cars. We're talking hundreds of vehicles.
People get really upset.
Oh, I know they do, but sometimes that's the only way you're gonna get the streets.
Yeah,
So the other hurdle we have too is the alternate side of the street parking. So there are places where Westchester Street's a good example. There's parking on one side the majority of the time. The alternate side parking, when they move over to the other side, now it's not quite intuitive what they're supposed to be doing. They don't always move. Oh, well, I'm not supposed to park on that side. Yes, but it's alternate side. You can park over there, move your car over there. But everybody that's on that side of the street the next day has already shoveled their driveway and their sidewalk. And now here comes DPW with a 12-foot plow and just
You plug them back up again.
plug it back up again. So it's a challenge, and the more of these features that we have, the harder our job can be at times. There are places in the city where there are neighbors that will go door to door and make people move their cars or offer to move them for them, just so that we can get our job done effectively. And then there's other places where we can't even send a plow truck down the street because there's no room to get down the street. Even a pickup truck, you can't get down it with a plow and a park.
In New Haven, I had two guys, they were usually on light duty, and their job was to go out with a bullhorn. No, I'm really serious, and say, the plow is coming, move your car, or you will be ticketed and towed. And that was their job, to try to make sure when we had really heavy, that was their job.
Did it work?
Yes,
Oh.
oh yes, you see a big plow and lights and tow trucks lined up, okay, with a car. It was one of the joys I had of being at DPW in New Haven, because I could get the police to do stuff, and with a car. And they wrote the ticket, called your car away. We had no choice. We could not, if, you know, you try everything, no, you don't wanna do it. We offered them free parking in city parking lots, we would do the school lots, we would do anything to get them off the street so that we could go through, and then once we're done, we're done. You don't wanna listen, you got 3 feet of snow, people are screaming, I used to laugh, because the average age of a citizen in New Haven before snow was 22. The minute snow fell, it was 86, and everybody had a doctor's appointment that day, okay? And if they didn't have a doctor's appointment that day, it was your fault that they missed Grandpa's funeral. My phone would ring off the hook all the time. So when I say I feel, when you're not, I'm glad you're here, because it's like, I felt the pain when they say certain things like, you can't do it with snow, you just can't. So thank you for coming, I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Is there anything we can do as a council to advocate, or, you know, like, is there equipment that will make it like easier or anything like that? I feel like everybody here will agree that will be, you know, advocate for you and, help, you know, in a way, make streets safer, but also not having that burden on you.
That's a tough one to ask without getting myself in trouble, but I'll think you try. I need people.
Yeah.
You need people to do things. I have a whole yard full of equipment and trucks. Our snow fleet is second to none in the city. Even in major snowstorms, I have a monster snow blower that we've just been itching to try. And thankfully, we hadn't had to use it. I would buy one every year if it wouldn't snow. But I need people to run the equipment and drive the trucks. And the more of those people I have, the more I can dedicate, okay, this is what you guys do. Even during a snowstorm, I don't even have somebody that can run a skid steer and clear parking lots. We're trying to push cars off the street and get people into parking lots. And that skid steer could then be more effective uptown in boxing the snow and getting it out of the parking spaces than just a plow truck that's angled one way or another. They can scoop this stuff up and get it to one location where we can just go scoop it up and get rid of it. But I don't have that. The snow blowers, things like that, they make it a lot easier. Broadway, the one joy of Broadway and having the bike lane is instead of putting the snow along the curbs, I can leave it right in the bike lane. You still have parking on the street, leave it in the bike lane, give me 24 hours, and I send the snow blower down there, clean it up. The only reason I did it with this storm is because most of it was melted. We just used a bucket for it. But in places that we can get a snow blower into on the front of a skid steer or on the front of a loader makes it a lot easier too, because it's just one person in the machine, one person in the truck, load in the truck.
Are you saying you don't have people who are able to operate that?
I don't have enough people to do everything that we're asked to do.
So you don't
And
have.
for specifically snowstorms? Like you need to like.
I don't have
basically
enough
hire
people,
you.
period.
Just period, okay.
I have 23 people that are dedicated to sanitation. I have a full service mechanics garage. I have my skilled trades of an electrician, a carpenter, and a welder. All of my Wilbur Avenue guys, all I say 14 of them, are dedicated when it snows. There's 14 people. I've got that. If I gotta pull one guy out of the shop, or if I have a couple, guys that get done early on their routes, I can pull them out of garbage trucks. But DPW has to work on a 5-day week. There's only 2 exceptions to that, December and January. Towards the end of December through January, we can operate on a 4-day week. Every other time, we have to operate on a 5-day week because of the schedule for trash and recycling. So where it gets complicated, and why we try not to cancel trash, if I absolutely have to plow the roads and I don't have another choice and it's not safe for my guys to be on the road with garbage trucks, I'll put them in plow trucks. But the other morning, at 4 o'clock, when these guys are rolling out on the road, I started with 6, and at 7 o'clock, I had 15 people on the road, and the roads cleared up pretty quickly based on the conditions. In years past, I'm sure you've all been here for more than one season, that it takes a little while to get the roads cleared in the city. And that's all just the primary routes, because most of you only travel to and from your home and your job, maybe to the store here or there. You get into some of the remote parts of the city that you haven't been in before, it'll take us a while to get those roads cleaned up and pushed back where they really need to be, just because I don't have the resources to dedicate.
So, sorry, if you wanna continue.
No, go ahead.
All right, so is that you don't have the resources because you don't have the budget, or because with your budget, the offers that you can make are not competitive, or there is simply not enough people who want to apply
Yes.
to those jobs? But I mean, I think like that is something that we can bring up, is like, hey, to have safer streets, we need more people in DPW, and it is something that for the next, I mean, too late now, but we can help advocate for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, DPW forces, and I'll go back from before I was here, the DPW forces were 110. Now we hover right around 60. Wow. We have more responsibilities than we had when I started in 2018 with the city. We have more responsibilities. We have more divisions of public works. Not all these people are able to do all of that work. I have specialized groups of guys that can do certain things. Not everybody can do everything, including plow snow. And municipal jobs, especially on the DPW side of it, are not what they were in the past. So the appeal of coming to the city of Kingston and working for a public works department isn't there for the people that I'm looking to hire, because they can work in the private sector and make a lot more money. And when I was 22 or 23 years old, it was about the paycheck. It wasn't about the health insurance or the retirement or the time off. It wasn't about that. And the people that can come and do this job effectively are not interested in doing this work anymore. They're just not. It's a thankless job. So when I started, we had a pretty good, we were fully staffed, -1, and filled it very quickly. We were able to add additional staff through the years of 19 and 20, and then COVID happened. So as people left, I wasn't able to fill positions. And then COVID continued, and then we came out of COVID, and our inbox was dry.
So you've lost half your staff in the past 6 years?
No,
Oh,
that
okay, that was
one-time
fine.
number goes back to 2009,
Oh, I see, okay,
and that was before the recession. But the cuts that have been made in DPW and the lack of interested applicants is just dwindled to make it very, very difficult to hire people. And, DPW did their part to help balance the budget the best we could this year. And some of that came with losing positions. Thankfully, none of those positions had people leave. So my hope is that things do get better and our budget gets better, and I can reacquire those positions to fill in the next year or two. But even at that staffing level, I can always use more people. There's always something to do in public works. And every time that we do a project, there are things that need to be taken care of that take additional resources. So the more of these things that we build, regardless of what the project is, whether it's a streetscapes project or safe routes to school project, Every time we do something, every time we change something, it comes with an additional cost, and that cost also comes with additional manpower. Otherwise, we may not be able to get there today. We have to wait, wait next week, next month, next season, whatever it may be. And I'm hanging on that balance, and I tell you this because you're a council that wants to advise on, pavement markings and things like that. My paint crew consists of 3 guys. I could have a dedicated paint crew on the road every single day of nice weather, and that's all they do. But unfortunately, I don't have the resources for the rest of our tasks on a daily to dedicate them to that, because my paint crew is also my flagging crew. So anytime there's a job that requires flaggers, they're on that job, whether they're with the electrician or whether they're with the sewer crew doing an excavation, they're doing that as well. Signage. Just this week alone, we've had half a dozen signs run over my cars that need to be put up. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you really get into it, it takes time. And these are the same guys that are on the paint crew. So in a given summer, if you were to have 6 months worth of working days, you might get 160 hours worth of paint on the road, and it's a big city. And,
What is the square mileage of the city?
3 or 4.
Yeah. Square mile.
I think it's 3 linear, right?
Roughly
4,
10.
5,
10
6.
square miles?
Roughly 10. Well, some of that's in the center of the river, but
Right.
Yeah,
they're
but,
taking
but
up
just,
some land, I don't know, yeah.
just curious.
We have a couple more items to cover up, and we're running out of time. So, yeah, thank you so much for
Anytime you guys have questions, feel free to email me or reach out. And,
7 months.
I have plenty of examples of things that we have implemented or things that we can implement in areas to try and make it safer. I have a list of kind of pet peeves that I don't want to see, and I can take you to places and show you why. Some aren't even in the city, some are in neighboring townships, and I can show you that it can be effective, but I caution because of the unintended consequence of implementing whatever that may be.
All right, thanks, Ryan.
Great, yeah, thank you so much. All right, so there are a couple more items. The first being the letter speed limits, which we know. Yeah, we'll get to it. Speed camera funds plan, we kind of touched upon, so I think we can skip that. Something else. The beg buttons and Prince Street, Gustavo. The beg buttons is a sort of old one we've had.
Yeah.
Is there anything to sort of?
See, I don't know if there's any update on, I think it's like Liberty Street.
Rudy Elmendorf, the incorrect voice.
Yeah,
I will check on that. I will see how we get that done.
yeah, that one, and I think like the bike box, it's also
Obscured by
obscured with the
Yeah,
camera.
well, and I tested it out myself on my own bike a few months ago, and depending where, the bike box is a little, half the size of this table. Where you are in it, it gets you or it doesn't.
Yeah.
We did a live test, where I had a guy watching the monitor, could he see me? And, it was working with like half of the bike box.
So they like that at least should get like obscure, like painted over like half of it, or I don't know what would be the procedure for that, but I feel like right now space is dangerous because people don't know that. And they might, be
Right, sit there for a while.
Yeah, so they might try to just cross.
Yeah, I think, that's, probably 5 years from now, we'll be repainting that green. What we do in the short term, I don't know. I understand the problem. Yeah, we'll see what we can do in the short term.
And I think in general, like part of the thing about the back buttons is like, I feel like they could be reconfigured a little bit in a way that I understand why they're needed, and I agree, like we need them because we cannot detect predictions with the technology that we have. But I don't see a reason why, for example, a bike gets the automatic green, even if there is no bikes. Why can I also give the default green to pedestrians? And I feel like something like that would also help, for example, like when there's snow, because sometimes that snow accumulates, you physically cannot reach the back button. So it's really dangerous for a pedestrian because people won't be able to access it. So I think it is something that I would ask, like, if we can consider that at least for a trial. Like, I don't think that's gonna add that much time. Actually,
Yeah,
it will be more efficient because if you try to reach the light and then the cars get the light, then you have to wait another cycle. So then you're stuck in Broadway, for example, again, twice because you didn't get the default on green. So I think there's a lot of arguments that I could make in favor of like having the pedestrian getting the default. But yeah, I think something to consider. And like, I'm happy to go out with you if you wanna like walk around and.
yeah, well, let me dive into, I'll have to get with the consultant who designed it and see if, I think there is a reason. Are you specifically Elmendorf or all the way down to Grant, are you thinking?
Yeah, like,
Just
I mean, mostly Broadway, but I feel like, you know, we have Clinton Avenue, I feel like that should be treated in a similar manner. Like, for example, like right now, we're doing construction, and I think it was changed, but at the beginning, you couldn't, there was like barriers around the back buttons because they were like doing the curb cuts. So
Right, yeah,
you couldn't.
there was nothing, yeah. Yeah, well, as a little update on that, as of tomorrow, we expect the two new signals to be operating on Clinton Avenue.
A side note, we don't know about it, but, the cars that come towards Clinton from Albany Avenue.
Yes. The no red on red sign,
Yeah,
it's been taken down, it's gonna be put back up once everything's working.
but what I was gonna say, sometimes those cars, they're gonna make a right, they get a red light, even though the cars coming from, kind of Westbrook Lane or like, Strang Drive, I have the turn into Albany Avenue. And I feel like there is no reason for those cars to have the right because, you know, they can do that.
Yeah,
They can-
Check it tomorrow.
Okay, I was gonna ask if that was.
Tomorrow, it'll be working.
Okay.
Did you have something about Prince Street you wanted to say?
Oh, yeah, right now, so we made, I think, yeah, that's
The one
Prince
way.
Street, one way, I think. I frequently use that corner, I think like that, I've been thinking about it, I think it's like a good decision because that takes one street. But now the problem is that when you stop and you're coming, I forget what street that is.
Garden.
You're like two behind and the car is coming from, kind of like to the back of like Duck Days. They cannot see you. And I was wondering if there is a way to move that stop sign a little bit farther ahead.
On Hasbrook?
Yeah, so if you come from Hasbrook, people won't see the cars
Yeah.
coming on the stop sign because it is too far.
That's
We
not-
moved that sign once already. We moved it about 10 feet further ahead. There was a tree there. There was a tree at that intersection. The stop sign was behind the tree, so you could see the stop sign.
Yeah,
The tree had since been removed. We moved the sign forward as far as we could move it.
but not only, there is a line. So if you stop at that line, you are not in the line of sight for the cars that are coming from Hasbrook.
Right.
So now that, and I understand why that stop was there because there could be cars coming from Green Street. But now that that's not the case, I think that line could be forward. So that way.
Painted stop bar on the pavement?
Yeah.
We moved the sign up to the stop bar. But we have to allow for turning radius from East O'Reilly onto Hasbrook Avenue. That street's not that wide there.
Yeah.
And when there are cars parked along the curb at Top Case, that's why that parking was prohibited before.
Yeah.
There's not enough room to turn without off tracking onto the sidewalk. So we chose to keep that stop bar back. Now, we are talking about doing something with this intersection. We've been talking about it for 2 years. If anybody noticed, I think about a year and a half ago, We painted that big hash triangle out because of when you come in Prince Street and you come around the building, the stop sign is so far to the right, behind the curb at DPW. With those lanes, we painted the turn lanes, the straight lanes, the stop letters in the road. The goal is to shorten that intersection up. Now, the first step was to get Prince Street one way from Smith to Garden. Now, if we can extend that curb and narrow that intersection up, the Garden Street traffic won't be stopped so far back that they're not gonna see the traffic on Hasbrook. They're now gonna be 30 feet forward ahead of that to give more visual of who's in the intersection at the time.
Yeah, that's pretty much kind of what I was saying.
That's-
And it's great that you guys have that in mind.
We've been talking about it, but again, with the redesigns of these intersections, it's not always, we started with the paint to see if it would be effective. And in many cases it is, because it will direct the driver to stay in the lane and not just cut right across it. But I do feel that a physical barrier there will help that intersection a little bit by allowing the Garden Street traffic to move ahead that much further. But when we redesign these intersections, it's not just about that. We have to consider the drainage. And these larger intersections, it's an old city, so the drainage may not be adequate. So it adds a significant amount of cost to some of what we're going to try and do. Oh, it's not that we're trying, it's just we're trying to take into account all the factors that we have to deal with.
I think for me, it's like one of the criteria that it's something that it's being considered, so.
And there's one other point Ella wanted to raise about bus shelters. I guess,
The
around
next I'm
town.
gonna die. Okay, I just, we don't have to come up with an answer that, I don't know if we have an answer for this right now, but I'll just quickly say, so I think last year or the year before, in the Ulster County budget, there was money put in for bus shelters for each municipality in the county to have 2 bus shelters put in. So, and then the planning department, so we were following up on that recently because nothing has happened with the shelters. So the planning department said that they've reached out to every municipality and no one got back to them about the bus shelters. So I'm wondering,
And I can report
Yeah.
that in Kingston, I asked this mayor's secretary, if the mayor was secretary and said that the city did not receive that invitation for bus shelters.
okay,
So somewhere
Pick
it
up
didn't
this
get communicated.
okay.
Yeah, so but I don't know where.
Okay, so maybe they need to resend the
Well, if it was
invitations.
in a past year budget, that money may be gone.
Yeah, but,
Brian
Well,
Slack is aware of it, so
yeah.
when I heard that from the mayor's secretary, I sent it to Brian Slack and he
Okay.
said he was gonna
Thank
look more
you.
into it,
thank you.
but I
Great,
don't have
yeah.
any more information on that.
That came
Yeah.
out of the UCAT.
That, exactly, that's what
That was at the
he
UCAT meeting.
Yes.
All right, great, I think
Okay. thank
that, we thank
Yeah,
you.
I've actually got to run.
Yeah, no, we thank you both so much for.
you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Again, if any questions, please reach out. I am available and fairly flexible in most days.
Fingers crossed for another, warm, snowless,
Great. It'd be great. Help us all.
And I will really help you get some more staff because
Well-
you need it.
Again, I understand the constraints.
I do too, but you still.
We're gonna
need
work
help.
with whatever they give us.
You still need them.
Everybody has to be patient. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, so we're gonna go into executive session now. So thank you both for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah,
See you in January.
all right.